Hello dear students, this is Zeeshan. Today we are going to learn very briefly as to how do we solve upcoming prelims paper in two iterations. Now we all know that the prelims paper needs to be solved in two iterations, but how exactly do we do so? Firstly, before we move on with the questions, this is the question paper from prelims 2022, and the first consideration that we'll have in our mind is in the first iteration we'll be solving only the short questions, which would be somewhere around 30 to 35, at max 40. Short questions would not be more than that, and the remaining questions will be solving in the second iteration. Now let's quickly jump to the question and understand how exactly are we going to do this and how exactly are we going to save time by solving the paper in two iterations. So for example, as you can see the question on your screen, this is question number one. Now I won't go through this question in the traditional sense in the first iteration. Say for example, I won't read this question in this manner, that rapid financing instrument and rapid credit facility are related to the provisions of lending by which one of the following? Option A, Asian Development Bank; B, International Monetary Fund; option C, United Nations Environment Program Finance Initiative; and option D, World Bank. No, rather I would be just glancing at this question. I'm using the word glance. I would glance at this question and search for the keywords. Here the keywords are rapid financing instrument and rapid credit facility. Now it took me max 5 seconds to glance at these keywords. Now having read these keywords, there can only be two cases. Either I have read about these keywords, or I don't have an idea about these keywords. In the first case, if I have read about these keywords, I'll attempt the question. But if I have no idea about these keywords, I would directly skip the question. I would not read the options. So in this manner, I have decided in maximum 5 seconds whether I would be attempting this question or I would be skipping this question for the second round or for the second iteration. Now taking a similar example of question number 2, what are the keywords here? Here the keywords are NEER, N-E-E-R, REER, R-E-E-R. Now assuming I am a student who finds economy difficult, so in that case I know for sure that it would be difficult for me to solve this question and I would need more time to attempt this question. So naturally I would skip even this question in the first iteration. So I have skipped question number 1, I have skipped question number 2, and we have done a similar thing on question number 3. Now jumping to question number 4. Now here again I'm glancing through this question. I'm taking a bird's eye view, and what I find is this keyword G20 common framework. This is within 5 seconds. Now I know that I have read about G20 common framework, possibly in the newspaper, possibly in a magazine or somewhere, but I've read it. Now I will attempt this particular question because I have confidence about this particular keyword, or I have read this keyword. Now I go on reading these statements. Statement number 1, statement number 2. Now students ask this, sir, what if we start answering a question but later we realize that the question is not that straightforward? So definitely taking example of this question, that might very well be the case. Say for example, we might be sure about statement number 2, which says that it is an initiative to support low income countries with unsustainable debt. We are clear about this statement. But about statement 1, we don't know whether it is an initiative endorsed by the G20 together with Paris Club. We have not read about Paris Club, or we might not have any idea about Paris Club. So what do we do now? In the first iteration itself, we looked at the keyword, we read the entire question, and then we came to know that we are not able to answer the question with 100% certainty. So should we leave the question again for the second iteration? No. Just because we have given enough time to this question, we have read the question in entirety, and we have given somewhere around 1 minute or so to the question, we will attempt this question in the first iteration itself. Because if we leave this question for the second iteration, and when we come back to this question, we'll have to give the exact same amount of time to this question. We'll have to read the question again. We'll have to think on the question again. So it will make more sense to attempt this question in the first iteration itself, because we have given this question enough time in the first iteration itself. Moving ahead, now assuming we have followed the same process in many questions, now let's take example of a few more questions. Now assuming we are attempting question number 23, and again we'll be taking a bird's eye view. And what are the keywords in this question? West Africa, and there are names of lakes, Lake Victoria, Lake Fagivine, Lake Augusta, Lake Volta. Now assuming I have not even heard the names of these lakes, or I have not seen the map of West Africa, I would naturally skip this question. I would not waste time attempting this question, and I would directly jump to the next question, and I'll leave this question for the second round because I'll have to think on this question. Now coming to the next question, question number 24, which says Gandikota Canyon of South India was created by which of the following rivers? Now I am confident about this question. Possibly I have read this term Gandikota Canyon on a Kit Kat wrapper or so. So I have that confidence, and I will read the entire question and I will attempt this question in the first iteration itself. And in this manner, as we have started with question number 1, we will go till question number 100. We'll cover the entire paper in this manner. And to reiterate what we have discussed earlier, in the first iteration, while we go from question number 1 to question 100, we will be able to attempt somewhere around 30, 35, at max 40. The reason being, all these questions will be short ones. Okay? We'll be solving all these questions purely based on our knowledge. No elimination skills, no logical techniques being used in the first iteration. Now we start with the second iteration. We go back to question number 1. Now this is our question number 1. We had skipped this question. We had skipped this question in the first iteration. Rapid financing instrument, rapid credit facility. We had not even read, not even heard about this. Now we read the question and we try to seek whether we can attempt this question by using some elimination technique, or by using some hack, or by using some logical trick, and so on. So this is the second iteration, where thinking process will be heavy compared to first iteration. First iteration was knowledge based, so that we could complete very quickly, roughly in 40 minutes or so. Now we have roughly 1 hour 20 minutes for the second iteration, in which we'll be attempting somewhere around 60 to 70 questions. So somewhere around 60 to 70 questions in the second iteration, and we are giving more time to the second iteration because we are not sure of the correct answer, and we will need to think. We'll need to use some elimination. We'll need to use some logical trick. So taking example again of question number 1, we attempt this question. Then we had also skipped question number 2. We try to attempt this question. I'm not speaking too much about the logical tricks that we have learned as part of the Dominate Prelims program. Those have been discussed at depth in the program. Here I'm speaking more broadly, so that everyone watching this video can understand, even those who have not been part of the Dominate Prelims program. So we have jumped to the question number 2. Again, we read the entire question, and by using some elimination or by using some trick, probably we might use extrapolation, compatibility test, feasibility test, or some basic elimination techniques, and so on, and we'll try to attempt the question. In this way, again, in the second iteration, we'll move from question number 1 to question number 100. Now again, some students ask, should we always move in a linear fashion? Should we always start from question number 1 and move till question number 100? So that's not necessarily the case. Now assuming I am a student who finds economy difficult and I find polity very easy. So naturally, I'll start with polity. And one good thing about me starting with polity is that all the polity questions are clubbed at one place. I won't need to find those questions separately in the entire paper. Polity questions are already clubbed in at one place. They are clubbed together. Similarly, questions from other subjects as well. be it economy, be it modern history, they're also clubbed at one place. So if I decide to start either by polity or by economy or by modern history or any other subject, I can do so and it will be very convenient for me. The reason being, I want to keep my morale high in the beginning of the exam, or because I know that I am relatively weak in economy. So it makes more sense to me to attempt economic questions in the later part of the exam or at the end. But because I am comparatively stronger in modern history or polity, I'll attempt polity or modern history first, which will again boost my morale. So these are the basic learnings. So what have we learned? What have we learned in this brief video? We'll solve the paper in 2 iterations. The first iteration will be completed in roughly 40 minutes, and the second iteration will be completed in roughly 1 hour 20 minutes. In the first iteration, we'll be attempting somewhere around 30 to 35 questions, at max 40. The reason being, those will be short questions. Those will be such questions that we'll be solving solely based on our knowledge. And how would we would be doing so? We have again learned we would be taking a bird's eye view. We would be giving maximum 5 seconds to a question and decide whether we will be reading the question and attempting it in the first iteration. We have taken example of this question number 1, rapid financing instrument and on and all. And in that 5 seconds, we'll decide, and either we'll skip the question or either we will read the question and attempt the entire question. After we are done with the first iteration, we'll come back to the second iteration and then we'll start the thinking process. Second iteration will be thinking heavy compared to the first iteration, because in the second iteration we'll be solving those questions about which we are not sure or we don't have 100% certainty. Those we'll be solving in the second iteration. And lastly, we have learned that we need not go in a linear fashion. That is, we need not go from question number 1 to 100. We can go theme wise, we can go subject wise. Those subjects which we find relatively easy, we'll be starting with those, and those subjects which we find relatively difficult, we'll attempt those questions in the later part of the paper. The reason being, we want to keep our morale high in the beginning and the mid part of the paper. So this was all, guys, in today's video. We'll be coming up with more such videos that will be helpful in the upcoming prelims exam being held on 28th May. See you there.